I had always been searching for a place where I could feel safe, away from the noise of the world. That's how I found that small clearing deep in the forest, a patch of land hidden from everything, where I decided to build my cabin. Nothing fancy, just wood, nails, and hope for a fresh start. For months I worked alone, hammering every plank, cutting every piece, raising walls that would be more than shelter. They would be my sanctuary. I needed silence, peace, time to understand what really mattered. At first, sleeping there felt strange. The sounds of the forest scared me, leaves rustling, distant calls of unknown creatures. But slowly, that fear turned into something I could call home. The cabin seemed to embrace me, protect me, as if it was a part of me. I remember the clear mornings, when sunlight broke through the wooden cracks, warming my face. I'd sit on the porch drinking coffee, staring at the tall trees, feeling the wind brush against my skin. It was a freedom I'd never felt before. But the peace I felt was fragile, built on hard choices, far from everything and everyone. I didn't want to rely on anyone. I wanted to prove to myself that I could survive, that I could find myself in that isolation. I never imagined that the very cabin I built with so much effort would become a place of terror, a maze of fire and smoke where my life would hang by a thread. And that's exactly what happened that fateful night. The night had started like any other. The wind was picking up outside, rattling the trees around my cabin, but I wasn't worried. I'd seen storms before, and my little shelter had withstood worse. I was sitting near the fireplace, the flames crackling softly, casting dancing shadows across the wooden walls. The air smelled of burning pine and wet earth. Outside, rain began to fall light at first, then harder, pounding the roof like 1,000 tiny drums. Then the thunder came, sharp and sudden, splitting the sky with a blinding flash. The power went out immediately after, plunging everything into darkness. The familiar glow of my lamp vanished, leaving me alone in a world of black. At that moment, the storm felt different, menacing, like it was warning me. I wrapped a blanket tighter around my shoulders and tried to calm my racing heart. The storm was nature's fury, yes, but I was safe inside. Or so I thought. I heard it then, a faint crackle, almost like a whisper, but something was burning. I sniffed the air, smoke, thin but unmistakable. It wasn't coming from the fireplace. My stomach dropped. I rose, fumbling in the dark to find my flashlight. The beam cut through the gloom, revealing the outlines of my home, my sanctuary. But in one corner, behind a stack of firewood, I could see a flicker. A small flame, hungry and alive. I knew right then, this was no ordinary storm, and this night would be the last time I would ever take this refuge for granted. That flicker in the corner was like a warning sign flashing red in my mind. I crept closer, heart pounding so loud I thought it might burst out of my chest. The flashlight's beam trembled as I tried to steady my hands. The fire was small at first, barely more than a spark, but it was eating through the dry wood fast. How had it started? I couldn't tell. Maybe a stray ember from the fireplace, or a faulty wire in the lantern I'd left plugged in. It didn't matter anymore. Smoke began to fill the room, thick and choking. I covered my mouth with my sleeve and tried to think clearly. Panic clawed at me, but I forced myself to stay calm. I had to act fast. I grabbed the nearest blanket, hoping to smother the flames. I beat at the fire again and again, but the flames only grew stronger, reaching out like hungry fingers. The smoke was darker now, swirling around me, stinging my eyes. I realized then I was trapped. The fire was between me and the door. The cabin that was supposed to be my refuge had turned into a trap. The very walls I built to protect myself were now burning around me, threatening to consume everything. In that moment, everything changed. Survival wasn't about peace or solitude anymore. It was about fighting for my life against a raging inferno. I moved toward the door, but the thick smoke blocked my path like a wall. The flames danced closer, licking the floorboards, twisting up the walls. I could feel the heat pressing in, like a physical force trying to crush me. The windows were sealed tight. I'd built them that way to keep out the cold and the wildlife. Now, those same windows became my prison bars. I banged on the glass with my fists, desperate to break through, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged through me. My breath was shallow and ragged. My throat burned from the smoke. I looked around for anything I could use, a tool, a heavy rock, to shatter the glass. But the darkness hid everything. I realized my safety measures had backfired. The locks, the barricades, my own hands had sealed me in. I was trapped inside my burning refuge. There was no time to think, only time to act. The fire was spreading fast. I had to find another way out or die trying. With the fire closing in, I grabbed the thick wool blanket from my bed, hoping to smother the flames. I threw it over the nearest blaze and pressed down hard, but the fire resisted, pushing through the fabric like a wild beast refusing to be tamed. Panic clawed at my chest as smoke filled the room, making it harder to breathe. I coughed violently, my eyes burning, but I forced myself to stay on my feet. Water was my only hope. I rushed to the small sink and filled a bucket, then threw it over the flames. It hissed and sputtered, but only slowed the fire's advance for a moment. I grabbed more buckets, a cup, anything to carry water. Every splash was a small victory, but the fire was relentless, devouring everything in its path. I realized I was losing ground. The heat was unbearable, sweat pouring down my face, my skin prickling with the fear of what was coming next. There was no way I could wait for help. No one even knew I was there. I was completely alone, and the fire was winning. The fire was closing in faster than I could fight it. The walls were glowing red hot, and the smoke was suffocating me. I had to make a choice, stay and burn alive, or risk everything to escape. The window was my only chance. But it wasn't just any window. It was small, high off the ground, and shattered glass covered the ground beneath it. The drop was 3 meters, and I had no idea if I'd survive the fall. My body ached from burns and smoke inhalation, my vision blurred. But staying meant death. With every ounce of strength left, I climbed onto the windowsill, the heat searing my skin. I looked down at the jagged glass and rocks below. Fear screamed at me to stop, but survival screamed louder. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and jumped. I hit the ground hard. The glass tore through my bare feet, and pain shot up my legs like wildfire. I stumbled, struggling to catch my breath, coughing violently from the thick smoke still in my lungs. My back ached from the fall, and blood dripped down my arms where I'd scraped against the cabin's wooden frame. The night was pitch black, but I forced myself to move, to put one foot in front of the other. Every breath burned. Every step felt like walking through fire itself. I was disoriented, dizzy, but I couldn't stop. The fire was still raging behind me, and I was running for my life. I screamed, but the forest swallowed my cries. No one was coming. No one even knew I was here. It was just me, fighting, surviving, breathing through the pain. The forest around me was a dark maze, shadows swallowing every direction I looked. My feet bled, my body screamed for rest, but fear pushed me forward. I had no idea where I was going, only that I had to keep moving. Every rustle of leaves, every crack of a branch sent jolts of terror through me. I wasn't just running from fire anymore. I was running from the unknown. The forest held dangers beyond my imagination, and I was exposed, vulnerable. I stumbled over roots and rocks, my vision blurring from exhaustion and pain. Cold sweat dripped down my face, mixing with the dirt and blood. The night air was thick, heavy, almost suffocating. I wanted to scream for help, but my voice was weak and cracked. No answer came, only silence, deep, endless silence. For a moment, I thought maybe this was it. Maybe the forest would be my final resting place. But somewhere inside me, a small spark of hope burned brighter than the fire. I'd escaped. I wasn't done yet. I collapsed near a small creek, my body spent and broken. The cold water lapped at my hands as I tried to steady my breath. Darkness pressed down on me like a heavy weight, and I felt myself slipping away. Then, through the haze of pain and exhaustion, I heard something, a soft sound, like footsteps crunching leaves. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but then I felt a wet tongue licking my cheek. A dog. A real dog with warm eyes and a wagging tail. That moment felt like a miracle. Soon after, a couple appeared, hikers who had been passing through the forest. They saw me lying there, battered and bleeding, and immediately called for help. They wrapped me in their jackets, gave me water, and stayed by my side until the ambulance came. For the first time in hours, I felt safe. Months later, I returned to what was left of my cabin. The ground was blackened, the trees around scarred by the fire. Everything I had built, every memory I had made, was reduced to ashes. But among the ruins, I found something stronger, a renewed will to live, to rebuild, to heal. I survived the fire. I survived the forest. I survived myself. And though the scars remain, both on my skin and in my soul, I carry with me a story of survival, resilience, and hope.